In April 1970, 3 astronauts drifted helplessly through space when an explosion had crippled their spacecraft. Oxygen was running out, but the man who would save their lives wasn't even on the mission. He was sitting on Earth. This is the incredible true story of astronaut Ken Mattingly, the man who turned a grounded flight into one of the greatest rescues in space history. Before we begin, subscribe to Dr. Malcolm because space history is far stranger and far more dramatic than science fiction. Number 10, he was removed from Apollo 13. Days before launch, 3 days. That's how close Ken Mattingly was to going to the moon. Mattingly had trained for years as command module pilot for Apollo 13. He knew the spacecraft better than almost anyone alive. Then, a medical scare changed history. He had been exposed to German measles, and doctors feared Mattingly would get sick in space. NASA made a brutal decision. He was pulled from the mission. Another astronaut took his seat. Jack Swigert and Apollo 13 launched without him. At the time, it looked like the worst luck imaginable. It turned out to be the exact opposite. Number 9, the man who stayed home saved the mission. 2 days into the mission, boom, an oxygen tank exploded. Apollo 13 instantly became a survival mission. The spacecraft was dying. The crew would freeze, suffocate, or burn up on re-entry. NASA had no plan for this scenario except Ken Mattingly. Because he had trained on the command module more than anyone, he knew its systems intimately. Engineers brought him into mission control and gave him an impossible task. Figure out how to bring 3 astronauts home in a spacecraft that was never designed to operate this way. For days, Mattingly barely slept. He simulated every switch, every battery, every watt of power, calculating exactly how little electricity the spacecraft could use and still re-enter Earth's atmosphere. He personally tested the procedures in a simulator. The power-up checklist he helped create became the lifeline of Apollo 13. Without it, the crew would never have made it back. Number 8, he rewrote the spacecraft's survival manual. Here's the shocking part. NASA had never planned for a spacecraft to shut down completely in space and then restart. The command module was supposed to be powered the entire time, but Apollo 13 needed to go dark, almost completely to conserve battery power for re-entry. No manual existed. So Mattingly and the engineers invented one. He calculated the absolute minimum electrical load the capsule could survive on, reducing power consumption to levels NASA originally thought was impossible. They turned off heaters, navigation systems, even guidance computers. The astronauts drifted through space in near-freezing darkness because Mattingly's calculations said it would work, and he was right. The world watched Apollo 13's re-entry in total silence. For 4 minutes, radio contact was lost. No one knew if the astronauts had survived. Then, a signal appeared. They were alive. For helping save the mission, Ken Mattingly, the astronaut who never flew, received the Presidential Medal of Freedom, America's highest civilian honor. He had rescued astronauts from Earth without leaving the planet. NASA didn't forget him. 2 years later, Ken Mattingly got his second chance. He became command module pilot of Apollo 16 in 1972. This time, nothing stopped him. While his crewmates walked on the moon, Mattingly orbited alone above the lunar surface, becoming one of the most isolated humans in history. At times, he was farther from another person than any human had ever been. Just him, a spacecraft, and the entire moon beneath him. On the return trip to Earth, Mattingly did something extremely rare. He opened the hatch, in deep space. Far beyond Earth orbit, he performed an EVA, a spacewalk to retrieve film canisters from the spacecraft's exterior experiments. There was no rescue possible, no nearby space station, no shuttle. Below him, nothing but the universe. It remains one of the most dangerous spacewalks ever conducted. Most astronauts you know are really known for just one program: Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, or of course Shuttle. But Ken Mattingly flew in two eras. In the 1980s, he returned to space, commanding Space Shuttle Columbia. He had now actually piloted both a moon spacecraft and a reusable space plane, something only a tiny number of humans have ever done. From slide rules to onboard computers, he witnessed the complete evolution of human spaceflight firsthand. Number 3. He logged nearly 21 days in space. Across both Apollo and Shuttle missions, Mattingly spent nearly 21 days up there. Now, that might sound kind of small today, but, in the early era of spaceflight, when missions were measured in days, not months, it was honestly a massive achievement. He orbited Earth. He orbited the moon. And, well, he survived the most famous near disaster in NASA history. Number 2, he was portrayed in the movie Apollo 13. If his story sounds cinematic, it really is. In the 1995 film Apollo 13, actor Gary Sinise played Ken Mattingly, especially in those intense simulator scenes where he tests the re-entry procedure over and over again. Those scenes weren't exaggerated. They were, in fact, accurate. Mattingly actually did run the simulations repeatedly, refusing to leave until the astronauts had a guaranteed path home. Hollywood didn't invent the heroism. If anything, they toned it down. Number 1, the illness that saved his life. Remember why he was removed from the mission? Doctors feared he might catch German measles. Here's the twist. He never got sick. But had he flown, he would have been inside the spacecraft when the oxygen tank exploded. The crew survived, but they came terrifyingly close to death. Ken Mattingly's greatest mission was, honestly, the one he never flew. The illness that grounded him very likely saved his life. Ken Mattingly proved something extraordinary. Sometimes history's changed not by the people in the spotlight, but by the one person quietly solving impossible problems in the background. He never walked on the moon, yet, without him, Apollo 13 might have become NASA's greatest tragedy. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to Dr. Malcolm and join us for more incredible true stories from the history of space exploration, because the universe isn't just made of stars and planets, it's made of people who dared to solve the impossible.